Hello, everyone. Today, Martin and I are going to talk about a recent murder that occurred here in Austria. The murder in question was a 16-year-old girl named Manuela, and she was killed by her Syrian ex-boyfriend. He was just the primary suspect as of yesterday, but he has since been apprehended by the police and admitted to the murder. He strangled her to death in a park and then buried her under a pile of leaves. And this isn't the first time that something like this has happened in Austria. There was another girl, Michelle F., and she was stabbed to death by her Afghan migrant boyfriend. He stabbed her twice in the back. One of the stab wounds punctured her lung, and she was left dead in her bedroom. He put a cabinet in front of the door, and I believe it was her mother and sister that had to walk in and move this cabinet and find her dead there, and he escaped out the window. So this is a trend that has not only occurred in Austria but all across Europe. And I want to start off this video by asking a question to Martin, a common question that he's been asked and that a lot of people ask. So what is the difference between, Austrian men also commit crime? It's not just the migrants. So what would your response be to this? Well, everybody, not everybody, but a percentage does it from both sides. So why are you just going after the migrants here?
There are two narratives now in war about these murders. So the leftist narrative is basically men are violent. We need to do something against man violence. We need to protect women. And best way to do is, of course, this new hate speech law against racism and sexism online. And then there's our narrative, which, in my opinion, really fits the reality and the truth. And this is that we have a clash of two cultures. We have a promiscuous dating, very superficial sex culture of the West, in which those girls were raised in. They got to meet those migrants on Tinder, thought it was just a normal date. And for those migrants, everything's a question of honor and of faith. And for them, a woman who is together with them has to stay with them. And if she wants to leave, she betrays them. They lose the honor. Losing the honor means social death in the circles, and that's why they kill them. So basically, it's just, for me, a socio-political dynamic that is happening. And as a politician, pouring in and letting in 1 million of young Muslim men, hungry young Muslim men without women into a society like that for me is completely irresponsible. It's highly dangerous, and that's why I say those people are partly responsible. And the other reason that backs up my narrative is you cannot prevent normal crime. You cannot prevent the jealousy drama that also happened in Austria within these 8 days. One man killed his wife because she betrayed him.
This was an Austrian man, not a migrant.
It was an Austrian man, Austrian woman. She committed to him that she slept with a different man, and he got a rage tantrum and killed her. Very tragic, terrible, but you can never prevent it with a political measure. But with a political measure, you can prevent the influx of non-European Muslim migrants and all these murders where you really can clearly see a pattern. So that's why I say the questions are different. Our narrative is true, and that's why we are entitled to and we have to be sad about it, but also angry about it. And those murders really have to lead to political change. Why I would say the other murders or general violence against women is a very bad thing. You can try to change, you can try to raise awareness, but there are no clear political measures you can take against it. And that's where the leftists are completely confusing the situation. But what would interest me as a man to ask you as a woman is, why do you think that these girls, and we can show you some images of them so you can have an idea of how they look.
This is the murder of Manuela.
Why do they fall in love with these guys? You can see Yazan, he's making the ISIS finger sign in this Facebook pic. And on the other pictures you can see that this girl is actually she was a very pretty girl. You can see her in 2016, that's when she met this Yazan guy. And then she fell for him. And I also talked yesterday in the city. I was there. I was putting a candle on the side that she was murdered, talking to people. And apparently Yazan was very well known in the city for being like a gang leader and linked to violence. But also she was known in the city, and she was kind of a pretty and famous and popular girl. Here you have
Michelle F.
Yeah, she was even younger. And here she fell in love with this guy who also looks like this usual suspect. And for me, why you think that do these girls fall for these men?
I think there's a clear passiveness in Western men that settled over Western men, and I think this is multifaceted. There are many reasons for this. One that just comes to mind, especially that's been caused recently, is, for example, with the feminist movement saying, oh, if you touch my arm, it's rape. Of course, this is going to make men more passive, hesitant to approach women, or not even just, oh, I'm scared to approach women because they'll accuse me of rape. They're just deciding it's not even worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, you have these men who come from these much more dominant, aggressive cultures. And so they're coming here. They don't care about this. They don't care about the feminist movement, even though the feminist movement has allied itself with them. They don't care what a feminist says. And a feminist is never going to chastise them anyway, because they come from these cultures and would be politically incorrect. So these men come here. They're extremely dominant. They just take what they want. And these women just inherently respect a more dominant man. Granted, there are unhealthy levels of dominance. For example, in the case of Michelle F., they write in the article that her boyfriend was extremely possessive, to the point where it was like you can't even talk to another man, look at another man. And of course, this is unhealthy, obsessive, but this natural dominance that they have, girls are drawn to it. But then you see eventually when these girls try to escape, they can't.
He took her phone and erased all the numbers out of the phone, except for his number. And she had to lock herself up in her room after she worked. And she was working to earn money for both of them to pay them a flat while he was sitting on his fat butt doing nothing and living off our tax money. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
so
it's an
that's what I would say. Just the initial being drawn to them, but then of course problems come later. But this is just what I would say.
I think you're right. It also reminds me of what I've seen in my youth on the schoolyards, not my schools, but other schools when migrants already were dominating. There were always this big, tall and strong Turkish guy who was leading the gang, beating up other people linked to crime, who also got the prettiest girl because he could protect her. And I think that's also something we should not forget, that women always are seeking for protection. And in the normal migrant-ridden, already replaced ethnic setting of a city like Wiener Neustadt, this guy, Yazan, could maybe ensure that she was protected, could get into clubs, nobody would touch her. And that's what also women naturally is seeking for. So I think we shouldn't blame
stability,
them too much.
protection.
Yeah. And now a question that our viewers might ask themselves is, we made videos about Austria finally growing a spine, Austria changing. So why is this still happening in Austria? We have the new government 1 year now in office. And this guy, Yazan, who killed the 16-year-old girl, strangled her to death just 2 days ago and put her under a pile of leaves, he committed violence, and he was convicted twice. And although he was a refugee, he was not deported. And the reason is the whole legal system is set up against deportations since years. So since years and decades, the socialists have been engineering the system and putting in place in the high courts all these leftist judges who love to hunt down and persecute patriots for putting up stickers on traffic signs. But if a guy like this Yazan, is highly criminal, they refuse to deport him. And now in the media, the police said, the normal police officer said, basically they can't do anything. They are powerless because the judges only even think about the deportation of a refugee when he committed something like a murder or a rape.
So it's just waiting for that to happen. This man in question, Yazan is his name. So he has a history of committing crime. It wasn't all murder. Of course, it was smaller crime, but he still had that pattern. He had that history. So why not see, okay, this guy's a troublemaker, let's deport him. No, they have to wait till he commits a murder, going that far, before they do something about it, before they even consider doing something about it.
We have our own criminals. We don't need to import new criminals. We don't need new criminals. They just shall go home. And I ask myself, and millions of Austrians ask themselves as well, what is the amount of crime necessary to deport an illegal so-called refugee? Because this guy, if he really is from Syria, is not a refugee. He's deserting from his army and his state, who is fighting the Islamic State forces in the desert. So he should immediately be deported. And that's also what we will demand. There will be a vigil, and we are starting and planning more political protests, because we are grieving, we are saddened by that, but it's not only sadness, it's not only emotion, it's also frustration, anger with the political system, and we want change, and we want it faster, we want it now. What we clearly want from our politicians is that all the illegals are deported, those who commit crimes are deported immediately, no matter how high the crime, and those who are waiting for the asylum decision have to be kept in places where they will not meet Michelle or Manuela, so they can could still be alive.
A last thing that I wanted to mention is there is going to be a vigil held for Manuela on Monday. So for anybody in the area of Austria or Germany, if you want to drive from Germany, please do come to that. Once again, it'll be on Monday, and all the information for this vigil will be in the description of this video.
Brittany and I will also be there, and it's been organized by citizens of the city. I've been at the site of a murder yesterday, and it was very nice and pleasing to see that many people just went there and put candles there, so the Austrian understand that this is not an attack only on some young girl, but on the whole Austrian population. And I'll show you some scenes of the site where she was murdered, and if you are from Austria or Germany, I would really be happy to see you on Monday there to commemorate Manuela, but also to show our politicians that we know who's responsible for that.